about giving people supplements. Yes. So as we said, one of the issues is that the government take the stance is you don't need supplements because you get all the nutrition from your food. But like we've said, it's like, yeah, maybe 30, 40 years ago you might have got all the nutrition from your food, but boy, you'd be hard pressed to get everything. Now you might be. But on the other hand, it's quite likely, depending on what you're eating, how it's being cooked, is whether you actually, and how well your body can actually take the nutrition from your food, is whether actually you are getting enough. And what tends to happen is that there are people that probably just automatically, without even thinking whether they need it or not, will take a multivitamin and multivitamin every day or whatever, anyway, regardless. And that's really, I suppose, is to any shortfall. So there's the sort of, if you like, the Joe Bloggs version of, okay, I'm not getting enough from my food, so I'm going to go into Holland Barrett, wherever, and I'm going to get myself a multi. Or I'm in a situation in my life, like try for a baby, so I'm going to go and get some folic acid. Or I'm in menopause, so I'm going to go and, or somebody suggested that I might be osteoporotic, or potentially, so I need to go and get myself some supplementation to stop that happening. And they will actually go for they will just self-medicate, if you like, for a single thing. And that will go on, this thing does this. And the person will think, either I've got that symptom, or I potentially will get that symptom, and so therefore I will go off and get some extra. There are times in your life where it probably is a good idea, and one of the things is pre-pregnancy, it's not in pregnancy. It's probably quite a good idea to look at the dietary. You can get special mixes now for people who are thinking of conceiving. Lack of folic acid in a pregnant woman does lead to things like spina bifida and things like that in babies. So it's actually, they do know that certain vitamins are really needed to be in place. And so, I suppose in some respects it's probably worse now than it's ever been, as far as that's concerned. And nursing mothers as well, similar sort of thing, because basically the baby's is basically parasitic. The baby's going to take what it needs. And and if you haven't got a lot, well then what you have got's going to disappear. That's basically it. So it's usually a time, and it's not to do with calories. You don't need to eat for two, but you do need to be careful what you eat, as far as that's concerned. Small children, I don't know how things go now, but they used to be, you had your vitamin drops, your vitamin A and your C. You could get little vitamin drops for kids. And they used to give you extra, in the 50s and 60s, extra vitamin C through foul-tasting orange juice I can think of in my life, that they used to actually...
But having relationship to oranges.
Yeah, but anyway, things like that. So they used to be very, very careful that babies got the right amount of core vitamins. The other times that it becomes an issue, obviously, is if you're not well. Puberty, boys go through zinc like no tomorrow.
You don't want to know why. You don't want to know why.
No, you don't, yeah. Zinc is needed for the formation of sperm. And smelly feet is really badly smelly feet is one of the symptoms of not enough zinc. The other symptom of not enough zinc is white flecks on nails. Not calcium, as people say, they are zinc spots. And so, yes, if you've got spots on your nails, then your body's telling you need some zinc. And smelly feet and very sweaty teenage boys, yes, definitely. And it's worth then supplementing or telling somebody, mum, that it might be an idea that they think about that. The rest really comes as a side whatever, or should be a side whatever, if we're talking to people about their nutrition. It shouldn't really be the be-all and end-all of what you do. But I think that part of the image, particularly of a kinesiologist or somebody working in medical nursing, is the fact that what the people are going there for is to get supplements. And the point being that they're getting supplements that hopefully, if it's done properly, that their bodies requires, as opposed to what the head thinks is needing doing. And so it doesn't matter whether you're muscle testing for it or whether you're dowsing for it. You still have to be very careful about where your thinking is, because your thinking will affect your muscle testing as much as it will your dowsing. And if you think that everybody coming through the door is going to be short of vitamin D, because vitamin D is the latest sort of thing that Holland and Barrett are plugging, then everybody who comes through the door will want vitamin D. Whereas if you can actually, get yourself grounded and centred and separate yourself from that thinking, you might still find that quite a few people need vitamin D, but you should at least be from a more professional perspective.
I suppose if you are then selling them the supplements...
I was going to say, that's part of the problem then, is if you are then selling them the supplements. And quite a few people, Biocare, the people that are easy to get hold of, Biocare, Lambert's and something else, they actually do relatively good practitioner deals. Can do quite nicely out of it. These days, if you suggest something to somebody and you actually have them, unlike when I was working, when I could open a pack and I could give them 10 and give them a plastic bag and give them to them, you're actually not allowed to do that anymore. You should actually sell them the whole single pack. Which is a shame, because I used to have it was quite a nice way of doing it, especially if someone's only going to take it for 4 days or something, which of course you can muscle test for doubts for how long they need to take and how much they need to take to actually tailor it for them. So that leads us to the point is, even if, whether you're selling them or not, you're sending them online or you're sending them to Holland and Barrett for something, or Boots or something like that, is that what actually they're going to be faced with. Now, one of the things that's changed in the last 3 years is a thing called the recommended daily allowance, or the recommended nutritional intake. The powers that be in Europe have decided that we need less. So, for example, when I was in practice, the RDA for zinc was 25 milligrams per tablet. Okay? And in fact, if you gave somebody a 25 milligram tablet, it would make a difference. No doubt. If they were really, really low, then having checked up what the toxicity level of zinc is, the toxicity level of zinc it's basically here, it's at upper tolerable levels. We're on page 8 and page 9. It's 50 milligrams. So you could give people, tell them to take double what it said on the pack, and they'd still be all right. In fact, upper intake, I happen to know the toxicity level for zinc is actually 100, but it's usually 50. But you can imagine, like 10 years ago, at 25 milligrams a tablet you would get from whoever. You get somebody to take a couple a day, for a muscle test a day, 7 days, then give it a rest. Come back, I'll check you next time. Now, if you go, like with this one, 15. Because the RDA for zinc, as you will see on page 8, has been dropped to 15. So the only things that you can buy as Joe Blogs is stuff that's at 15 milligrams a day. So if you needed to give them a therapeutic dose on that, they'd have to take 3. And guess what? The tub isn't going to last so long. So they have to buy more. Fortunately, Lambert's, for the moment, still do a practitioner level zinc, which I still buy. And the practitioner level zinc they sell as zinc citrate is 50 milligrams. It's 50 milligrams. So somebody really needed their zinc. So you've got a teenager, or a woman especially, with white spots. You've got a teenage boy with seriously sweaty feet and God knows what. You just out how many days they need their 50 milligrams zinc for. and it's going to get there a lot quicker. So what's happened is the new adjustment to RDA has meant it's more expensive for Joe Bloggs to supplement themselves effectively. Is that any great surprise? And that's happened across the board. So they dropped the RDAs. Okay. And that's what's happened, is they dropped it, so that. So if you do have access as a practitioner to people like Lambert's or Solgar or Biocare, you can usually buy in at a much higher rate. But I don't know for how much longer that's going to be. Okay. I must admit, I used to find that if somebody really needed the thing, you had to go for the 50 milligram. And similarly, vitamin B is a complex. There are lots of vitamin Bs, and you can buy all the vitamin Bs separately. Some are quite well known for doing specific things, like B6 can be very good for premenstrual issues. B12, as we discussed last time, you've got serious iron implications if you don't have enough B12 in the system. And B12 you can buy separately. But by and large, in my experience, and I've also read around quite a lot on this, is if you need generally to supplement somebody for B, you do B complex, you do the whole lot, because they work as a synergistic thing. What the body doesn't need of vitamin B, it will pee out. So you haven't got to worry about the fact that they're maybe taking vitamin Bs that they don't need. Because they will get rid of what they don't need. And it's basically they're water soluble and they will get peed out. And you're less likely to create problems if you talk to somebody about taking a vitamin B complex than if you start trying to pick at the individual Bs. Even with B6 being used as a premenstrual thing, it's very short term. And some people it works, some people it won't. But you usually find, because vitamin B as a whole family is a yellow energy, so serious solar plexus hit, then you know that for most people they could probably do with some vitamin B. Classic symptoms of lack of B is tiredness, inability to think straight. You know, all the yellow stuff, all the solar plexus-y stuff. And also infections that won't go away. Particularly bacterial things, like skin stuff, like pus spots and things like that, or even boils and all. Vitamin B, because it is very much it's yellow, so it's skin, because the skin vibrates to yellow. Skin is a solar plexus, so it's your key to your vitamin B, your skin stuff. So if you turn to page 9, I've already got it, there's a list here of vitamins and minerals. As you can see, I lifted this from a USA-Canada site because it was had the most information.
What is that funny U thing?
That's micrograms, micrograms. Okay, mu. Yeah, that funny U is mu as in micro.
Okay.
Yeah. So another very, 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 very tiny amount. And they've also got the common sources there. And obviously turkey's there a lot, and for turkey you can read chicken as far as we're concerned. But you can see, the thing I liked about this is they gave the recommended daily intake, which is slightly different from the European one, and they gave the tolerable upper intakes as well. So you've got those. Now, of course, we're used to seeing some things as being suggested for specific situations. I mean, like vitamin C. Linus Pauling, common cold, super overdoses of vitamin C, yeah, to shift colds and flu. And I think basically they work very, very well, but you've got to be careful if you're supplementing is how somebody takes a vitamin C. What you don't want is pink fizz variety.
Oh, so why not?
Because that's just the acid, ascorbic acid. It's actually, the body uses it better when it's in its buffered form. That's what it's called, buffered, which means basically from a pH idea, it's more balanced. So if you have magnesium ascorbate or calcium ascorbate, then the body is not so acidic for the body to actually use. And of course the advantage with something like magnesium ascorbate is you need magnesium as well. So that actually can be quite useful. So you'll find companies like BioCare don't actually sell ascorbic acid, they will sell you magnesium ascorbate because it's actually safer and less acidic for the body to take and more bioavailable. In other words, the body uses it a little better.
What does chelated mean?
Chelated basically means that it's introduced to the body in a form, it's usually referred to as minerals. Yeah, chelated minerals. It's introduced to the body in a way that the body can use it a little better. And there are some mixes that will mix with heavy metals and take those out of the body a lot safer. So there are some vitamin mineral mixes that will actually help the body to release things like mercury and things like that out of the system, because it basically binds the heavy metal in a way that can be safely released through the digestion. So bio in a form that the body can use is important.
Hence the bioflavonoid.
Sorry?
Hence bioflavonoid.
Hence the bioflavonoids, yeah. With the changes with the EU, a lot of vitamins and mineral mixes, vitamins in particular, are now being provided as things like bilberry or rosehip. They're being provided in their fruit and vegetable form because of the way that the EU is done, which is actually in some ways actually quite good because the body's more familiar with that sort of way of actually producing vitamins and minerals.
I was just going to ask, if you've got somebody coming to you and you manage to find out that actually they're deficient in vitamin C, and you say, well, you know, good things with orange juice, grapefruit, peaches, and they go, I already drink loads of orange juice and I have grapefruit every morning.
Yeah.
Would you kind of assume then that there's something that's blocking? I mean, is that possible to have you're having it but you can't absorb it?
Well, it could be that, but it could also be the fact that they're so lacking that that's not enough.
Oh, okay.
And that's when you come in with your muscle testing and your dowsing.
Yeah.
And you basically say what would be the optimum amount of vitamin C this person needs at this time.
Yeah.
So you say for the next week or so, because it varies from day to day, and you'd find out how much. You're thinking, okay, so and how much of that? So of that, how much do I need to supplement?
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there sometimes blockages around? So certain like vitamin K might be not so well absorbed if you had too much magnesium, or
that's right.
Is there a sort of chart?
Well, there's basically you'll find that I think it's in there. It's in that book anyway.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about it. Was it last week? Is that certain things need to work together?
Okay.
So iron and vitamin C works together.
Okay.
But then you also need your B12 as well. Otherwise, you're not going to get any of that working together. If you're dealing with magnesium, it's okay on its own. But if you're dealing with calcium, you need to do it with magnesium. Because calcium on its own can, and of course this tends to happen with women as they're disappearing into their menopause. They say, you need, your fear of osteoporosis as you get older, you need to up your calcium levels. And basically calcium without vitamin D or calcium without magnesium is really, to some extent even without a boron, is really asking for problems. So you're better off, and a lot of these people, they know exactly what's going on. So it's like BioCare, for example, will do a calcium magnesium mix, because what happens then is calcium won't be used by the body unless magnesium is present. Magnesium phosphatase is the thing that allows calcium to go down into the bones. Now the problem that you have with calcium is it's not water soluble. So the big question then becomes, if it's not water soluble, unlike vitamin D and vitamin C, where does it go if you take it in? And the unfortunate answer to that is around the heart and around the parathyroid.
So you can have too much of it.
Definitely. Which is why you don't take it on its own.
All right.
Which is why you always take it, preferably with magnesium and or vitamin D. I think one of the latest adverts on the telly is Jane Torvaldine talking about some yogurt with some extra calcium in it, but it's also got vitamin D in it. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's the rickets thing. Remember, the rickets, the thing that's now coming back that used to be around in the olden days, is that lack of vitamin D means that the calcium doesn't go into the bones, which therefore means that people end up with bendy bones, or children in particular. And of course that's coming back now, because kids are spending more time indoors. So there are certain things around certain vitamins and minerals that you need to know, and calcium is one of them. Vitamin C is another. It's how you take it, it's the food. And this sort of information, it's around in dummies, and I've actually there's 2 complete packs here. If anyone wants to lift them from Lambert's, if anyone wants those, I can't let me buy a keg go because I haven't got a spare one, but they dumped a few more. You can easily phone them up and ask them for stuff if you want. But it's their sensible professional people, like more Bicare and Solgar probably more than Lambert's, will actually give you every bit of information that you need. And so the thing is, you can't memorise this stuff.
No,
It gets into your head because you use it. And so if somebody comes to you and, like, for example, they're thinking of starting a family and you sort of think, haha, and they probably already know that they've got folic acid. You can look up how you want to deliver the folic acid. And like even here, vitamin C comes in 1,000 milligrams as magnesium ascorbate with bilberry. So you've got the thing, and it's got various different ones, it will tell you, and that's very specific low acidity, because that's always been the problem with vitamin C, is it's very, very acid. And the amount that's going to be a therapeutic dose is too acid for the body. So you have to take it in a buffered form, or you're going to upset the digestion. And so you get a lot of information, and of course all this stuff now is easily available on the web. And there's nothing wrong with looking it up. Because far from your client thinking, oh my God, she doesn't know her stuff, what it does is actually gives them confidence that you actually are double checking, what's best for them. So it's really good to have something like that around. It's not a problem to actually do that. And as we said last time, of course, things like, particularly for minerals, liquid minerals, of course, are absolutely ideal, because there's no problem then about absorption or ingestion. Compared with some of the horse tablets that you get. I mean, Lambert's are quite good at producing horse tablets. It's like their vitamin B complex. They do they do a B100, which is really full-on vitamin B, but it's big tablet. Whereas Biocare's vitamin B is capsule. The advantage with that is if you don't want to take the capsule, you can just take the powder out of the capsule. That you have to use mortar and pestle to actually break down. So, sometimes how it's delivered is important, and it'd be important for your client as well as how it's delivered. So, when you're checking somebody for nutrition, minerals, and vitamins, the thing to do is, like with all density or muscle testing, first question is, does this person need any supplemental help? Yes, no. Okay. Do they need vitamins? Yes, no. Do they need minerals? Yes, no. And that's when a list like this is quite good, because then you can just go, is it here? Is it there? You haven't got to try and memorise them in your head. And you'll find most people, if they're missing stuff, it's going to be what I call the day-to-day ones. Some that flagged up that are quite interesting, and in fact they came up when we talked about amylase, was if you haven't got enough phosphorus in your system, then the alkalinity up here isn't going to actually start. So sometimes things like phosphorus might come up, for example, or if someone's got diabetes, they might come up with chromium. Now, one of the interesting things, particularly about phosphorus and some of the other metals, is if you turn to page 11, there are other ways of getting minerals in the system. Now, some of you might remember now tissue salts. Somebody has bought the Schussler stuff. That has been bought by somebody. So the tissue salts, as we know them, went off the shelf. They've actually been bought by somebody now. The name.
New Era, wasn't it?
Use New Era. New Era has been bought. I'm trying to think who went for it. Oh God.
Is it recent within the last
Very
month?
recent. Oh, this is very recent. Yeah. It's been bought by somebody else, so they will be back on the market.
Oh, great.
But of course, at the moment, you can still get them as homeopathic potency 6 from anybody. You know, because that's basically what they are. But this is another way of taking in minerals. So, for example, if you had somebody who needed phosphorus, you might actually douse or muscle test whether they needed califos, magphos, or whether calcphos or furphos or natphos. So you've got phosphorus with completely different formats, and you may actually find, because this is a very good way, particularly if people got very poor absorption, this is a very good way of getting minerals into people. And of course they've got other, because they're the tissue salts, they've got other qualities.
Because I bought the phosphorus and I couldn't tolerate it.
No.
So it straight through me.
Yeah. I found that after I had Bex, my Bex, is my hair started falling out. And so I got one of their mixes for brittle nails and falling out hair, and it fixed it. It was the minerals I was missing, but not in a big mineral, but in an energetic mineral. And so for a lot of people, these work really, really well. And of course, you haven't then got the problem of overdose. You see at all. Like I said, even if New Era that take a little while to come back, you can just go and buy Nelson's, or you can phone up one of the homeopathic pharmacies, like the one at Dorchester or Helios or something, and just say, can you give me 6th potency Calamure, please?
I presume if you're looking for amylase, you really want calphos.
Not necessarily. You might find that a particular person, they need a particular thing. Because this is the thing, is you might know it's phos, but you don't know how that person wants it to be delivered. And this is the disadvantage of when you're looking just at a mineral supplement.
You've got 5 choices there of which way coming, can't you? The phosphorus. Okay.
And you know that these are the body works very well, because they're the ones that actually support the core structures of the body in an energetic form.
So what's the Cali?
It's potassium, kalium. It's the Latin name for potassium.
Okay.
And natrium is the Latin name for sodium.
Okay.
And of course, fur, as in furphos, is the Latin name for iron, run down the bottom.
Oh yes. So, and that was did you say that?
That is sodium.
Sodium. Okay.
And mure is chloride. So that's actually, number 9 is actually salt in a homeopathic format. Sodium chloride.
It helps.
So actually that can be quite useful. So if you've got somebody who's addicted to salt, the old pour it on the dinner stuff, and you're sort of saying, actually that's probably not a good idea, you might actually find that if they have some nat mure, their addiction to pouring salt actually disappears, because the body's saying, give me salt, but maybe not quite in the format. that they actually are. So the vibrational mineral supplementation can be very useful.